been fortunate to have Aaron with us since the inception of our board and the inception of our annual gatherings up here. So he's been very supportive, and we're excited to have him present today on a great story for you to hear about with respect to the Tacoma Rainiers. And Aaron is currently leading the renovation of the final stage of the $30 million renovation at Cheney Stadium. He's been with Microsoft, and he's with Mandalay Baseball Properties prior to this, so he has some interesting background, and he's currently with Schlegel Sports, Vice President with Schlegel Sports. So put your hands together. Welcome Aaron to the floor, please.
Prior to being at Microsoft, I was with Mandalay Baseball Properties, which is probably the most successful minor league sports ownership group. You know, we're used to going into markets, building brand new stadiums that were the nicest, in the country, doing huge numbers, and really kind of running these things less like a small mom-and-pop operation and more like a business. So when I got the phone call from Kirby Schlegel, who had just bought the Tacoma Rainiers, I kind of laughed because the Rainiers were known as the gong show, I guess is the best term, of AAA baseball. Lowest revenue, worst stadium, aging, not kept up. And I started to think about it, and again in line with what Cliff said, this sounds like a heck of a challenge. I'm from the Northwest. The Northwest hasn't been fortunate, as other parts of the country, to have these great minor league experiences and these great parks. And so I took the job without ever being inside or seeing Cheney Stadium. I had driven by it on the freeway, and that was enough to know we had to change that eventually. And it was about going in there and seeing what we could get done. And is there an opportunity to make something incredible happen in the Northwest with a franchise that was loved, and I'll go through some of the history, for many years, but it just kind of gone by the wayside this way. So today I want to take you through, this is the first time I've actually kind of put this to a PowerPoint. It just kind of happened, and I'm very grateful. We had two things going for us. One, Tacoma, the market in Tacoma was not apathetic about the Rainiers. They loved the Rainiers. They just hadn't been back for 20 years, or they'd come for one game a year. So a lot of times in sports, the toughest thing about turnaround is you go into a market where the fans are apathetic. They don't care if the team's there. We had people who loved the Rainiers and hated the Rainiers and everything in between, but there was a passion there. The second thing I'm grateful for as we weave through this story is the staff that we've brought on to do this turnaround are some of the most non-ordinary people you've ever seen in your life. I mean, we literally, and we'll get into more detail, they literally came from all walks of life, where their first impression when we bought the team was walking through, and I'll show you some pictures, an 8-foot-tall barbed wire fence that surrounded the stadium. And they believed that they could make this place great. And so we'll kind of weave through that story. And then we're going to talk about the future. We have a really exciting, we achieved our goal of where we were 3 years ago of let's get a new stadium going. And we have a $30 million renovation that I'll show you some of the final renderings are. We've just locked on those. And then we'll open it up to some discussion. Go through a few history slides. Cheney Stadium was built in 1960. At the time, it was a very modern facility. It was kind of the space age craze then, so the spaceship design that you see there isn't by accident. It was built in 100 days. There was a phone call made that if you guys get a stadium, we'll give you a team, and you'll have the Giants, San Francisco Giants AAA affiliate. Tacoma also had a great demographic at the time. Before the tech boom in Seattle, Tacoma actually had more money. There was a ton of industry, a ton of timber business, port business, things like that. And so it was kind of this bustling place in the Sound back then, which it went through a severe down period and is now back on the uptick. And Ben Cheney, who invented the 2x4 and was a Tacoma guy, actually owned the team and built the stadium. So you also had this local philanthropist and energy around the team. And, you know, it was the hot ticket. I meet people that, are 40 that somehow were at opening day 51 years ago in 1960. Everyone was at that opening game and could tell you who played. We got to the 70s, and Tacoma won the, which is a great picture, by the way, of, I don't know if that was the Rainier Queen that day or what that was, but the outfit's pretty good. It was minor league franchise of the year twice. At the time, I believe the Chicago Cubs owned the team and decided to move it. And basically, it was like your Baltimore Colts situation where they were going to pull up the semis in the middle of the night and take the team away. And a guy named Stan Naccarato, who ran the team and was part owner for about 20 years and was kind of Mr. Tacoma, he got on the phone with 19 other businessmen. They all put in $5,000 and were able to save the franchise. And to this day, Tacoma's the longest running continual AAA Pacific Coast League franchise at 51 years. By the way, all those guys, when they sold the team in the mid-'90s, got checks for about $600,000. So that was a good return. We'd all take that deal. And the thing you had going is the minor league boom really hadn't started with new stadiums. So people weren't used to the new amenities. In fact, the new stadium boom hadn't started at any level. So even when you were looking at the big league teams coming into the market, you weren't talking about the brand new state-of-the-art facilities. The 80s, for most of the 80s, we were the Oakland A's, AAA affiliate, and you had really good players coming through, and that helped with the success. Now, they were Canseco and McGuire, and there was a lot of steroids going on, obviously, but it had a pretty good run during the 80s. 90s, we have another steroid user there, but the team was purchased in 1994 by an out-of-town ownership group, and then became the Mariners affiliate in 1995. And what you saw happen when the new ownership came on board is they tried to change everything all at once. And so they would bring in new staff, new people, and basically kill all the relationships. And up until this point, kind of in the 80s, early 90s, the Rainiers were such a community asset that they could survive and make a little bit of money because people wanted to keep the team there, and they wanted to do business with their friends and do that kind of thing. And these guys basically took the franchise and sent it off the deep end. You know, that it was too much of an expense for them to paint the concession stands, to keep the park clean, to have a front office staff out selling. You had a 5 or 6 person front office staff really up until we purchased the team in 2000. Again, same thing started happening. They hadn't raised prices. By the time we bought the team, we were still dealing with 1988, 1989 prices. They were too scared to build the value and, again, believe they could be something other than ordinary and add value into the ticket packages. So at the time we purchased the team in 2006, which we'll get to, you still sat in the first row of the stadium for $8. And you still had segments in reserve seats for $3.82. And so when you start looking at your revenue models and how you're going to grow this thing, you see that that's a significant challenge. When we set out to do the turnaround, we really created 4 pillars. And it's going to get a little bit redundant, but I'm going to walk you through each season and what these 4 pillars are. The first one, the most critical one, is the belief. And that speaks to, guys, we're going to turn this thing around. We don't know if we're going to get a new stadium. We're not going to be the Seahawks or the Mariners, but we're going to be as good as we can be and get this community behind this team again, because we may be able to get a stadium down the road. And we need to be building now that greatness. You can't get a new stadium and flip a switch. You can't launch the Sounders and just flip a switch. I mean, these guys knew what they were doing and how to build it. It doesn't work that way. So from everything we approach from a staffing perspective, from a product perspective, we started really in year 1 and even more year 2, so that at the time, if we did in fact get a new stadium, great. If it was going to take a few more years to get a new stadium, we're still going to be highly profitable and have this thing turned around and make it socially acceptable for people to go to Tacoma Rainiers games again. The second aspect of that is creating products. We had basically the same exact products in that park, again, from the 70s and 80s. And people change dramatically the way they want to experience sports venues, and business people especially have different things they want when they go out to a sports venue. So we had to create products that people love for every segment. The third was sell the positive and transform the negative. This was probably the biggest challenge and a reason why there's not a lot of people that were with the original ownership group that we've retained on our staff. We had to figure out things that, despite being in this old stadium that was somewhat falling apart and having a very small season ticket base and fan base, how do we find things that we can be proud of and get our fans proud of? And things that are negative, how do we maybe tell a different story about those things? And the fourth pillar is do not negotiate with terrorists. And it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but in the sports business, terrorists can be internally. They can be people that don't believe that when you make a new product or a new price that it could ever be sold because it's never been. Terrorists can be, and thank God none of them are here, sponsors who believe that when you say something is this price and at this level, think that they can come to you a week before the season and say, well, we know you need to hit a number, so we'll give you X. And you have to be strong enough to say no, and you have to have an ownership, which again we're grateful to have, that's okay with that as you build that model. So the first year was kind of our on-the-fly focus group. You know, we bought the team. It officially closed in November, late November of that year, and so we were 4 months away from the season. So it wasn't a time where you can go, again, flip that switch and change everything. What we discovered, again, is the market had a lot of passion, good, bad, and otherwise, but the passion was there, and if that's there, you have a shot at turning something around. We couldn't just flip a switch. It wasn't to a point where we were dealing with an average ticket sales price of $15 and we wanted to get it to $25. Again, we were talking about $8, $5, $3. And pretty much, you know, if you did anything, any given thing on a certain day of the week, you could get free tickets to the game anyway, so no one was buying tickets. And we realized, you know, this is a 3-year process. By the time we get to that 2009 season, that's when we should see, to use the cliche, the tipping point of when things are really maxing out. And quite frankly, we'll need a new stadium or we're going to start to plane off a little bit. Business people didn't care about us. There wasn't a single company out there that didn't have tickets for 30 years that was coming to our park. You know, there were still people that obviously owned businesses that had tickets, but they were just diehard baseball fans. There was no sales force out there meeting with companies and saying, entertain your clients here, come to Cheney Stadium, do those kinds of things that you need to grow your business. Internally, huge culture of it's good enough. You know, there were people that are very good people, but you know, not necessarily a fault of their own. They'd been beat to the ground by the previous ownership group. No, we can't spend that. No, we can't buy that. No, we can't pay that. Just try to break even. Just try to break even. Just try to lose no more than $500,000. And so that's how they came into sports, probably at your guys' age, right out of school, and that's the first thing they learned when they came in, and that's kind of how they were trained. And the fifth thing we learned is in order to get a new stadium and to get the city, which people have been trying to get the city to do this for about 20 years, we kind of looked at it and said, well, if we were the city, why would we do it? Attendance is going down every year. Revenues are going down. The taxes they're collecting are going down. Why should they build a new stadium? No one seems to even care if we exist. So those are things we learned during that first year that we had to change. I'll do a quick pictorial for you here of what we actually walked into when we bought the stadium and what the experience looked like. This was a party deck, beer garden type area where you were supposed to entertain your highest end group clients. All it's missing is a hot tub. This was your concourse. You can see over to the right there the barbed wire things. It looks a little bit more like a prison work camp or something like that than a ballpark, and a lot of concrete, a lot of things that aren't real sellable when you're thinking about sports venues, especially when right up the street there's 2 fantastic brand new facilities. This is kind of your curb appeal. If you wrap around, our entrance to our park is you wrap around from the right of where this batting cage is. So your first impression of our stadium as you come in to have an experience is this barbed wired fence with unlandscaped ground, weeds coming out of the ground. I mean, this was what it was like, guys, during the season. I didn't just like take these pictures in November when no one was there. I mean, this is what you walked into as a fan. Again, another concourse shot. And this was, and I'll get into this a little bit, this was the most popular night. This was Dollar Beer Night on Thursdays. But Dollar Beer Night, you couldn't see the game. You were packed back on a concourse. And this was like if a parole officer showed up on Dollar Beer Night and walked through here, he could walk out with 50 guys. This was the night where there were fights. And when we started to introduce family ticket plans, we'd get phone calls, well, I'm not bringing my family out there for 7 games. It's not safe. I've been out there for Dollar Beer Night, and people are getting in fights and swearing and yelling. And so this was kind of their main profit revenue generator, was this gong show behind the grandstand that you couldn't see, where you serve thousands of dollar beers. And from a sponsor perspective, this is the kind of environment we had, where you see a lot of signs, you see a lot of competitors. There's really no clear differentiation between partners and who's at what level. And so as we get into the year 2 stuff, I'll talk to you a little bit about that and how we transform that. So belief. First of all, we had to find the right people. We had to hire, we did have to fire, we'll get to that in a second. We had to hire what we call commandos and evangelists. So we had to have, from the commando perspective, sales guys that would make 100 phone calls a day, go on 20 appointments a week, and go out and sell these products and not take no for an answer. And we had to have evangelists out in the community internally who said, you know what, we can make this great. We can make this socially acceptable. We can make this fun. We also had to staff up tremendously. Again, when we bought the team, there were 7 full-time front office staff members. We knew that in a new stadium, we're going to need 30 or 40, and we were able to convince ownership of let's hire those 30 now. So by the time we get to a new stadium, as we build this thing, again, we're not flipping a switch and training people. It's going to be a little bit more expensive, but let's get these people out here and get this well-oiled machine going and start training this market that they should expect a phone call from one of our sales guys every day, and they're going to come meet, and they're going to be presentable, and they're going to have a great story to tell. Again, that gets back to that sales culture. We do a week-long boot camp every year with our salespeople, and videotape our guys probably 2 or 3 times a week. It starts out very scripted, but it's only scripted for the purpose of understanding what kind of triggers you hear from a business person and what kind of product they might want to buy and how it makes sense. So as you get through it, you're not sitting there doing it off a script, but we do start with that foundation. We also, it's interesting enough, we had a women's magazine do an article on us last year. We actually have, as you notice from the pictures maybe, we have a higher percentage of women full-time employees than any professional sports team at any level in the country, which is just kind of a unique thing for anyone that thinks stereotypically that it's kind of a man-driven business or that kind of thing. It's actually not for the most part. And the last element of believe is lipstick on a pig matters. What that means to us is if Cheney Stadium is actually a decrepit, crumbling building, we're going to make sure it's the cleanest decrepit, crumbling building. We're going to make sure it has the freshest coat of paint. We're going to make sure that the restrooms are as clean as they can be, all 5 of them. We're going to make sure the experience is when you're in there and that the field's great and the outfield's painted and all this kind of stuff, because that stuff does matter. It starts to change the culture. We have people come out where internally we've been doing it over time that say, geez, I haven't been here in 10 years and this is the best I've ever seen the place look. Creating products people love. We really quickly realized that we had to get that average ticket price up from the $8, $5, $3. And we're fortunate enough to have our own concession company. We have a separate company that we run to do our own concessions. So you find out the cost of things and what you can do really easily. So what we decided to do is, we know the value right now isn't in the stadium for businesses to just come out and have season tickets. So we have to make them an offer they can't refuse. And so we created a suite of all-inclusive products. The primary one is called the Gold Club, which will become the Summit Club in the new venue. And it's mainly catered to businesses. You have access now to 2 different club areas. You have the best seats, the best parking. And you have all your beer, wine, soda, and water, and snacks like popcorn, peanuts, all included in your membership price. So you buy it on a full season membership basis only. And it took our average ticket price in those seats from $8 to $25 and now up to $30. For groups, we had a new area, new party deck area down the left field line, which you can see in that bottom picture, that was also all-inclusive, about $30 or $35 a head for groups of 50 or more. That included all the beer, wine, soda, water, snacks, plus food, hot dogs, burgers, things like that. And then we created an entry-level offer, which really helped us drive, 800, 900, 1,000 fans a game in groups, which was $9.50. It's called the Group Express. That's a ticket, a hot dog, soda, and chips. And so what we started doing is figuring out ways to get more people to come to the park because they weren't used to an experience where you call them up and you're like, okay, so I don't have to dig in my wallet maybe, or if I do, it's by choice. I don't have to do it to feed my family or to take care of my clients and things like that. The margins are great on it too because we run our own concessions. So those $25 are now $30 Gold Club tickets. Believe it or not, people that come out and all they can drink, beer, wine, all that stuff, costs us $3.10 a head. The Group Express for $9.50 is $1 a head, and the party deck's around $8 a head. And so we're keeping all that profit on the top side and getting a much higher average ticket price, which again helps us get that revenue stream going where we can be successful. We also did some kind of paradigm shifts from what's typically done at minor league venues. We got away from the whole Saturday night bobblehead first 2,000 fans. One, we didn't feel like it was a reward for our season ticket holders because they could get to the game late because they have that option, and then they wouldn't get a gift, but someone that comes to one game didn't. Second of all, it's sometimes risky to bank on having a great walk-up for some kind of giveaway when we're in the Northwest. It could be pouring down rain, and they're not coming out no matter what. So what we did is we did 3 or 4 nice premium gifts, but they only go to our season ticket holders. And by season ticket holders, we also give those gifts to our 7-game plan holders. So the entry-level product and family, we treat them like season ticket holders with the same seats for each game, et cetera. We did do a price freeze for our oldest segment of our fans. We do have about 200 or 300 fans that have been there since 1960. They sit behind home plate in great reserve seats, and they pay $3.82 a game. And for 2 reasons. One, we could have potentially priced them out of the park, and we didn't think that was the right thing to do from an ethical perspective. But 2, they're also the most vocal group. I mean, when I walk the concourse and I pass that area, I can guarantee a woman that looks like my grandma is going to point at me, yell my name, and do this. So I have 3 kids. I start using my kids as human shields when I go through this area because then at least if they call me, I've got Duke in this arm, Hannah in this arm, and they can't be that mean to me with kids there. So we're gonna honor those prices even in the new venue. $3.82. They can stay as long as they want. when we looked at raising the price, it's like, okay, what are we going to raise it to? $9, $10 times 300? It's not enough money to justify doing something like that. And we did some great family offers. Again, the 7-game plan. We partnered with Little Caesars on 5 or 6 Saturdays a year, where for $44 you get 4 hats, 4 pizzas, an inordinate amount of crazy bread, and that becomes a pretty popular product as well. Sell the positive, transform the negative. Again, we got away from dwelling on the stadium. You know, we had a mantra of it's got to be safe, clean, fun, affordable, and convenient. And that's what we live by. Those are kind of our internal pillars for what our experience needs to be like. And to us, you have to hit that for every segment. So those 5 things have to be true for the person that comes to 1 game a year, for the 80-year-old retired couple who has been coming to the game, every game since 1960, to the business people, everything else. We also, the team never had a director of customer service. So we hired a full-time director of customer service who did a lot of outreach programs and things like that to make people feel like, again, we cared about them and wanted their feedback. And that was also very valuable feedback for us as we tried to build the model. We switched the game program. We went from doing a souvenir game program, $5, it's the same all year, to changing our game program every night. So we have a 44-page game program, which also is great for sponsors, and I'll get into that. That 22 of the pages change every night. We have a couple journalism students and an intern we hire every year. They stay up after the game writing new stories, updating pictures, new cover photos. Shoot it over to our printer who works the 3rd shift all night, and boom, the next day at 5 p.m. we have these game programs that show up that people really like and they keep and they take home, and they're free. And so that was just another nice thing we introduced to make the fans feel good. And then our year 1, not negotiating with terrorists, and in this case our streaking mascot is the terrorist photo we used. No free tickets. We got away with every free ticket program there ever was. You couldn't go to Chevron and put a few bucks, a few gallons of gas in your car and get a free ticket. You couldn't go to Taco Bell and order a taco and get a free ticket. I mean, literally when we got there, I think if you were alive Monday through Monday, or Monday through Sunday, you got free tickets to the game. Again, we started some of the smaller price increases. We did create the new products, but we also, in areas besides that $3.82, started kind of creeping things up, maybe $1 or so. We didn't want to, again, be in a position where we go to a new stadium and all of a sudden everyone has sticker shock because the prices go up tremendously. And we started, although we couldn't flip the switch in year 1 to get some integrity in our sponsorship packages. And what I mean by that is, when you just saw that outfield wall, you could have seen, I think there was about 100 partners out there. Those 100 partners all paid a different price. They all had different elements. They all cut different deals. And the ones that did have the same, let's say there's 3 banks out there. Well, all 3 banks were on the outfield wall. They all had the same size sign. They all had the same amount of tickets. But one of them paid 50 grand. The other one paid 10 grand because he called up a day before opening day and said, I'll do the deal if you'll just take the money. And the guy that's running sponsorship is like, well, I'm going to get commission and I need to hit my revenue number, so I'll take the money. And so you had a lot of bad blood in the market from sponsors because it's a small enough community where business people talk to each other. We still are recovering from one. The idea for sponsorships for the auto market was to do a used car night, where you'd have every auto dealer in town donate a used car that we drive around the warning track and raffle off. And for donating those cars, the people would get an ad in the program, the auto dealers, they would get game tickets, everything. Well, as we started meeting with auto dealers, we found out they donated the car every year, we just never gave them the tickets or the game program. And so there's a lot of stuff you clean up when you walk into these situations. So our second year, this would have been 2008. This is where we started to actually see some of these things start to pay off. We did go through and nearly, even though all these people were new, our 6 at that time full-time salespeople, we ended up, most of them ended up either leaving or being cut by the wayside. And what I mean by this is there was also some holdovers, and I don't want to sit up here and say, oh, when you go turn something around, you have to fire everybody. But an example is when you're sitting in the room and you introduce that party deck or Gold Club product, and you say, well, it's going to be $25 or $35 a head, and the guy that is in charge of your ticket sales and has been for 5 years says, you guys will never get that. I mean, he didn't even say, we will never get that. It was immediately like, you guys are crazy, you'll never get that. Those are the type of people that, as hard as you try and as nice of people as you want to be, you're not going to convert them. They're stuck in that ordinary, this is the way we do things type of way. So we had some of that in year 1 because it was a tough sell for people. And we also had some guys that I always think is a good sign for a ticket sales staff is when guys are getting job offers, paying more money from someone they met with and sold tickets to. That means that they're doing a pretty good job out there. We had our first season in 2007. We did have a 10% attendance increase, and so our goal along the lines of what are we going to become, what do we believe, was to have another double-digit attendance increase. And this was kind of the year before the big year. This was, guys, we got to get everything right this year because I do think there's some traction for us to get a new stadium, and let's make sure we're sending that message out there and doing everything we can. And begin to rebrand the team. This was the Rainiers logo from the time they became a Mariners affiliate. What's bad about it, in my opinion, is this is actually what was on our home caps. So if you ever wanted to buy like a Rainiers hat and wear it, let alone the poor players, you look like you had like a business card letterhead logo on your head. No one bought it. You didn't really want people walking around town wearing it. And so we wanted something a little cleaner and something a little bit more modern and something that spoke to our affiliation with the Mariners. And so we created this mark as our primary logo. And saw our merchandise sales go through the roof, and again, becoming a lot more socially acceptable for people to wear our merchandise and let people know they like the Rainiers, and that led to, of course, our home cap and a new jersey. So again, just bringing things kind of modern. We killed the teal, even though there's still some teal in the Mariners affiliation. We didn't feel strongly about that color, and we could do more with this color palette. Creating products people love. The Gold Club was successful enough in year one where we had to create a second Gold Club area because it was too crowded. The first year Gold Club was under our seating bowl, and it was kind of a nice pub room that we dressed up a little bit. But in creating that, we didn't want to build something permanent because we knew if we built a permanent structure, the city's immediately going to go, well, you don't need that $2 or $3 million for that part of the renovation because you guys built one on your own. So we went out and basically purchased and built a, kind of a PGA Tour style sponsor tent and made it look nice inside. It was concrete flooring, obviously, but flat screen TVs and nice furniture and things like that. And it had a patio area where people could see the game because in the original Gold Club location, since it was behind the bowl, you couldn't see the game. So you'd end up going in there and getting your beer and wine and missing a lot of the action. Our renewal rates were through the roof. We were above 90% for the Gold Club and above 90% for the party decks as well. So it was really time, okay, we got that renewal money. That's a great renewal percentage. Let's go keep growing this thing and get new. And we saw that Group Express product that I told you about for $9.50 go from about 600 fans a game to over 1,000 fans per game, which is nice. When you have a 7,000 or 8,000 seat ballpark and you can bank on 1,000 people coming just on that, it really helps you get that sellout mentality. Park feels like it's the place to be. Sell the positive, transform the negative. For this pillar, for this year, we literally went paint crazy. Like, we painted everything in that place. We painted all the buildings. We painted the trim. We painted our old admin office that we didn't even use except to take clients in there sometimes. And just wanted the place to look great. Outfield wall we painted as well, brand new paint, because this was going to be the first year where we were going to go to our less is more view of the sponsorships, and I'll show you that here in a second. We also had to kill dollar beer night. So we eliminated and put it in the witness protection program for a year. We had enough families coming out after year one and enough incidents with the drunk dollar beer crowd in Tacoma that was used to doing those things. I mean, one guy found a baseball bat and hit our mascot over the head. Luckily, he was wearing his head right in front of a nice family section. I mean, there was some ridiculous stuff. So we had to shut that down. And we got cursed by the underworld of Tacoma, I like to call it. Like, there was more emails and letters to the editor about taking away dollar beer night than anything you would have ever seen. Terrorists in year two, it's really, we were the terrorists because our predecessors were, but when I say do not negotiate with terrorists, what I'm really referring to there in this case is we had to give a total lobotomy to our sponsorship market. Again, we had 100 sponsors. They all paid different prices. They all got different assets, and they were used to gaming our organization for whatever they wanted. So if we went out and something was 100 grand, lo and behold, it would be 15K for the exact same stuff by the time opening day got there. And so we created a less is more philosophy. We were going to have no more than 8 partners on our outfield wall, no more than 16 partners on our scoreboard and eventually video board, and that was it. And then area naming rights partners. And those price points were much more dramatic, but we tried to build the package with something for the company that's a direct ROI. So it wasn't just an ad buy like it had been before. We're actually going to put together a program and put our marketing dollars and expertise behind driving an initiative for them. We offered category exclusivity, which essentially means if there's a bank on the outfield wall at that dominant level, we're not going to sell another bank on that wall at a dominant level. They're going to have to go to a different level so that everything stays clean. And our kind of reason for this was the favored nations clause, which is perhaps the best objection handler when you do have a sponsor saying, what are you guys talking about? This is crazy. I spent 20 last year and now it's 100. Can I get a better deal? The favored nations clause, essentially, you can look them in the eye and say, well, we don't want any of our partners at a certain level we don't ever want to have to, look into their eye and say we gave somebody something at that same level for a less price. And so it kind of trains the market that while they might say no or you're crazy, that we're not just these guys out here trying to get the most money out of them and going next door and giving a better deal to someone else. We're sticking to it. And we took a lot of heat for this in year one, and had to say no to a lot of people that are just now starting to come back around because they see that we kind of stuck to our merits. We went from 100 partners again to 25, but we were able to double our partner revenue. And so we had less partners to service. We could do a lot more for them. We could provide them with a lot more assets while getting a lot more revenue out of them as well. And again, all of this to build towards that new stadium environment where we definitely were going to have a whole new landscape to do this. This is what just a real quick snapshot, this is what the outfield wall looked like our first season. And this is what it transformed into beginning in 2008. And you see, right now you notice a lot of signs and a lot of clutter out there and not much. I think if you're a fan, you're kind of looking at it like wallpaper. Like you see it once, you don't know who's who and what's going on. And it transformed into this landscape. So much larger signs against the background color of our wall, which I think is always a nice touch. It helps not clutter things up as much. And if you're sitting in our park, and this doesn't really do it justice, but our wall is 20 feet tall. So when you're out there and actually in the stands and you see this thing as a fan, it's a pretty significant impression for a corporate partner. So then we get to year three. This is the payoff year. This is when we really had to prove ourselves. And internally, we'd already had success in year 1 and 2, but year 3 was the big jumping off point. And we knew that we'd be negotiating our new lease because our lease is up after the 2010 season, so we knew this is when we'd start the lease negotiations. So every good thing that happens in the 2009 last season is something that helps from a media perspective, from a corporate partner, from a fan, from the city perspective of saying, you know what, these guys need a new stadium. We don't want them to leave. This is important now. We also got $2.5 million from the state as part of a deal that had been done 4 or 5 years ago that KL actually helped lead. And so we were able to do some things to update the park that wouldn't be affected by a major renovation. So we had a brand new high-def video board, which at the time was the biggest in minor league baseball. We had a 150-foot LED ribbon above our left field wall, which is terrific for sponsors. And we got a brand new scoreboard. We also thought we had a shot at breaking the all-time Cheney Stadium attendance record. And as we thought about the stadium and how we were branding it in this final 2 years potentially before we got a new stadium, because, let's be honest, we still have to hit our numbers. My ownership doesn't care if the stadium's 2 years down the road and we fail in the years in between. We kind of took on this theme of, all right, let's internally and then let's transfer it to externally. Cheney Stadium is Fenway Park as far as we're concerned. It's 50 years old, it's legendary, it's nostalgic. Let's quit talking about how it's crumbling, it's concrete, and it's old. Let's make this thing a relic. We did pipe in crowd noise to it, just in case we were showing it on a Tuesday night. as you're watching that, you know, and what's interesting is the only time people saw that is inside our actual seating bowl because it was on our brand new video board. And the inside of our seating bowl is a great place. Like, it's got some of the best views I've ever seen of any ballpark. It has a very steep seating bowl. You're very close to the action. So as you're sitting there, you get a better feeling for where you are and what you're doing than probably what actually exists. It all of a sudden is historic and nostalgic and all this great legacy, and it really helped us. And I'll show you some more things here as we go through how we kind of promoted last season along the same lines. Again, creating products people love. We had some good success story. Even in the down economy, our Gold Club renewal rate was almost 90%. What we found were a lot of companies were cutting business entertainment, but this was a good enough value for them. And they didn't have guys coming in with huge dinner receipts and golf outings and things like that. And these new sponsorship assets, having the new video board and scoreboard and the LED helped us generate more sponsorship revenue. But along the lines of selling the positive, again, one of our key pillars in Transform the Negative, is we created a 50-year anniversary logo we used everywhere. We ran ads that never showed a picture of the stadium or even a player. All they did was play off of the 50th anniversary thing. So if you were new to the community, you'd have no idea this place is old, but by the time you got there, or run down, by the time you got there, you feel like you were a part of history. And we just played on that on every single thing we did, with radio spots, with TV, everything else, of just creating this nostalgia. And what we saw a huge, and granted the weather was better, we saw a huge increase in our single game ticket sales. So there was a curiosity starting to build as, you had this 50th anniversary, but you also had, are they going to get a new stadium? What's going on here? And it allowed us to set the all-time single season attendance record. We also brought back, which some of you, I think, if you came out last year for the tour, some of you enjoyed our Tasty Thursdays, if I remember correctly. We got rid of the $1 beer, it became $2 beers. And Miller Lite partnered with us. And instead of putting them on that god-awful concourse area where we couldn't see, we purposely didn't sell our top level of our party deck. And so you can fit 1,000 people up there. And it became this great beer garden area. Completely changed the demographics. It was a bunch of college students and young people out there having fun instead of the guys that were trying to get in fights all the time. And if they were there, we had a lot of security, a lot of police presence. And this became a huge thing for us. And we've kind of built this whole ad campaign around a tasty moment because Miller Lite's tasty ad campaign. And it's become a really neat success story for us in driving the Thursday attendance numbers. And in this final year, heading towards our lease, the terrorists became the city, in essence, and negotiating with them. And we just basically felt we were at a point where, you know, we were evangelizing to them, the community, of how great an opportunity this could be, and we'd proven ourselves enough. And we had a lease that was up in 2010, so we started to have a lot of leverage as well. We also got a huge assist from the Mariners. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Howard Lincoln, but he's the chairman of the Mariners, and he's a very soft-spoken man. And we took a trip down to spring training where the whole city council was coming, and we met with them beforehand and said, you know, now's probably the time if you and Chuck Armstrong, as the president of the Mariners, have a bullet in your pocket, go ahead and use it. So we weren't there for the meeting. We waited outside, but I've never seen a city council look so pale and scared. And we could hear from outside Howard Lincoln actually yelled and gave it to the city a little bit and said, you guys do this or they're gone and we're gone. And so we had a big help from our Major League affiliate. And again, we had an all-time attendance record. We had all-time revenue and profit records. We had all the kind of who's who in business in Tacoma that were partners of ours or Gold Club members or party decks. And so every time a city council person's out there speaking or talking to someone over drinks or dinner, they're hearing all this great stuff about the Rainiers that, again, help us with that turnaround. It started as a belief internally that we could be great. Then we got people around us to believe, well, maybe they can be great. And now we're meeting with the city who says, if we don't do this, we're going to lose out on great. And again, it just has a lot to do with that belief that we could do it, and again, a great staff behind us. So where do we stand right now? Our stadium finance is approved. We have a $30 million renovation, which I'll show you some pictures. Kind of a key initiative for us this past off-season is to really, which is funny, I'm only 34 years old. I don't have a Facebook. I just started a Twitter account. I'm like dumber than my mom and dad, who both have Facebook and the social media thing. But luckily, I have good staff, and they've done some great things. And we've seen tremendous sales come from things we're promoting only on our Facebook account. We had a banking partner who went under. FDIC took them over, and we had created green Rainiers jerseys because their colors were green. We put on St. Patrick's Day, we put on Facebook, we had 1,000 of these things sitting around, no idea what to do with them, couldn't sell them because they weren't licensed. And so we put on Facebook that the first 1,000 people that show up can have a green Rainiers jersey. 1,000 people showed up in less than 2 hours, came and took their jerseys, and then we had this great thing going on where everyone in Tacoma was out at a bar for St. Patty's Day taking pictures with their green Rainiers jersey and putting them on our Facebook and putting them all over. So just one of those kind of organic things that luckily I have a smart enough staff around me who knows how to do all that cool stuff to get people to do it. We have a great staff in place. We have a very veteran staff now. We did increase our sales force, so we're up to 12 full-time salespeople, but other than that, everyone's stuck around pretty much since 2008. And we created a new road logo because we wanted to get back to the mountain since we are the Rainiers, and because, as you'll see, the way we're designing the new stadium, you're always going to have a really great view of Mount Rainier. And so we introduced our new road logo this year, which is selling really well and the team likes. And so now we get our ballpark. Our whole goal here in design was, look, it's unique enough and cool enough that for the first time someone gets a new stadium this decade in minor league baseball in the Northwest. But let's make it Northwest. Let's do something that has a regional feel to it. It might not look exactly like your typical bricks and mortar and ballpark and things like that, but that's okay. Let's give Tacoma a real signature piece. And so this is kind of what you'd see from Highway 16 and from the parking lot. What's important to notice how massive this structure is. Above the Cheney Stadium sign right there is where our current roof is. So this is going a full 2 stories above that. So when you're on Highway 16, which is the main highway running through, and driving by, you're going to see this massive wood and steel and glass structure. Below the Cheney Stadium sign is where our ticket office and our merchandise shop will be, so dramatically enhance those experiences. Our club is actually the top level on the right. I wish I had a little pointer thing, but the top level on the right is where that club will be. So what you'll have there is our Gold Club becomes the Summit Club now, and you have a full panoramic view of the field, and on the other side you have a view out to Mount Rainier. So it'll be a really, really neat area, and then our offices are going on the second level there. Here's just another view from further out in the parking lot of how the structure will look. Those are all suites on the left side as you wrap around what would be the third baseline, 2 stories tall. Here's a view from inside the stadium. We're keeping the party deck if you look kind of straight ahead across the way, but we're adding down here, which I'll show you a great picture of, where those ugly general admission bleachers are towards the bottom of this picture. We're putting a grass berm that slopes up. So this will be a great area, $7 or $8 a ticket, bring the family, sit on a blanket, hang out and enjoy the game. And here's a great view of that grass berm with a little picnic area above it, looking back into the seating bowl. And again, we kept this on the inside of the seating bowl, we kept that same wood kind of feel. And so you're sitting there and you almost feel like you're, at Sunkaty or at some kind of lodge as you're watching the game, which we felt was really relevant to the region. Here's another look from one of the suites, if you're looking across the seating bowl there. Carrying the wood beams. These are real wood beams we're going to have running all through the roof, so it has that real nice kind of Northwest feel going through it when you're there. This is one of the suites. One thing we did is we set aside, we only have 16 suites, and there'll be about 13 of those that are actually for sale. The other ones will be shared with corporate partners and held back for the team and ownership purposes. But we kept a huge sum of money in our budget just to make on FF&E, which is your furniture, your decorations inside, everything else. And our goal was, well, we're not going to be the biggest stadium. We're not going to have the biggest budget and everything else. We're going to make sure that our premium areas are really, really premium so we can get top dollar for these areas. And so we're spending a ton of money just on this kind of thing, on furniture, on the wood ceiling, on having the beams that run through to give it a real unique feel from a suite perspective and from a club perspective. This is one of the early renderings of what that Summit Club will look like. Kind of a lodgy feel, very warm, lots of wood, and keep the materials in the same palette that we have in the other parts of the stadium. What we're running into, though, is interesting enough, along the lines of how passionate our fan base is people are very scared that prices are going to go way up. There's a ton of people that want Cheney Stadium to stay the way Cheney Stadium was forever, which is probably what people thought. People probably wanted to have the Kingdome forever. There's always a certain segment, if you can believe that want that kind of experience. And so it's a challenge to us to kind of tie in the old with the new. And there's a few key people in Tacoma, Brad Cheney being one of them, who's Ben Cheney's son, who's putting in $5 million of his own money to do this stadium renovation. Stan Naccarato, who was the guy that saved the team in the middle of the night and ran it for 20 years. And a couple other guys who are old broadcaster that are kind of the credibility pieces from this young, bald guy like me to the people that are 50, 60, 70 that make the most amount of noise in the community if they don't like something.
I think Ben Cheney's vision was to have a place where families could gather, watch professional baseball in a clean and modern environment, and have a structure that they were very proud of in the stadium.
It was really a wonderful place to broadcast a game, to watch a game, to play a game.
Well, we had a TAC committee looking for a franchise, but Rosie Ryan called in August of '59, said, if you have a ballpark, we'll be there.
Oh, wonderful ballpark. It was modernistic. It had kind of a flying saucer look to it. At the time, we were all into the space thing, and it was a
best places ever looked right
ballpark
there.
instead of being a ramshackle wooden structure that I was kind of familiar with from minor league baseball. It really had a big league feel.
You know, of all the things about the stadium construction, I think my father was most proud of was the timeline, that it was built on time, and the fact that he was the general contractor, which was an unusual title for him at the time, but he saw it through and got it done, and we still are enjoying the stadium today.
Well, it was a dream come true, and we rejoiced in having a Coast League team, competition with Seattle in those days.
I had the interesting experience that I was doing the television in the original phase, the Giants phase. I was doing television for Tacoma and for Seattle, both rival teams, and occasionally they would play each other, and that was a tough night for an announcer.
My history of the stadium goes back to who played here, and obviously it started with the Tacoma Giants, and Cleveland was here, and Oakland was here, and I think having Seattle here, or having the Seattle Mariners AAA affiliate here, is really the thing that really resonates with a lot of the fans here in Tacoma.
You know, you get the greatest names in the game have come to Tacoma. They bloom here, and you had them here, and now they go to the bigs.
Tacoma has achieved 50 years straight in the Coast League, and it's going to guarantee another 30.
I'm certainly lucky to know that for 30 more years, we've got baseball in Tacoma.
Cheney Stadium is going to be the center of what Tacoma is built around, and we're going to have a baseball team, and it's going to be fun.
If you wanted to say it's the heart of Tacoma sports, it is.
You know, I think my father's legacy is important to our family, but I think what's most important is that baseball will still be played here for the next 30 years.
Go Rainiers!
So that's all I have. Any questions?